Hello, YouTube. We're back again. I have the red shirt, so I figured it's time to film some more D&D. We're talking today about making custom monsters. Not going all the way into homebrew, but taking monsters that exist and modifying them for your needs. There are plenty of monsters out in all of the source materials, so there's a lot of ways that we can use monsters that your players might be familiar with, but tweak them in a way that it may be a completely new encounter or completely new to them. This is one way that I like to save myself on some energy and effort. And you can take an approximate balancing act from the CRs, and then when you start to add more stuff on top of that, make it feel like it's right. What I have for you today is a monster that I made and I've run for a party in my recent game, as well as a series of sort of informations and encounters that come along with this character that maybe you could try in your game, or something similar. We are going to talk about Telgon the Usurper. This is the most recent sort of boss battle, not quite big bad evil guy, but some form of large event that a group of level 9s have gone through. And so we're going to show start to finish where we ended up with the character, what sort of base did we use, and then what we threw onto it as well. So this is a two-part setup as well. The Telgon encounter had a encounter for the players to interact with first, and then he actually took the battlefield. So this is a way that you could implement this either in a dungeon, through a strange event or a random encounter. If they get whisked away through darkness or a teleporter or fall into a well, you could implement this via a dreamscape. The party members are sleeping and all of a sudden they wake up in this situation. There are a lot of ways that you might be able to implement this into your game. So let's show you the screen. Here we are. So in essence, what we've done here is made an arena. I've used Dungeon Draft, which is a great program for making arenas, or maps and other things. But you can go ahead and use whatever you're comfortable with. In essence, it's basically just a large arena that has some debris that they might be able to hide behind and stands. Now, what I did when I run the encounter, I filled the stands with fiends. Telgon is a fiend. He has a bunch of fiends that were watching this event happen. Basically, the idea is that this is going to be some sort of entertainment for the crowd. I was inspired by a song or some music that I had heard, and that's what built this encounter around. So Telgon is a bit of a performer. You might say that he could even be a high level bard or whatever is appropriate for you. But he's a showman. He wants to put on a good show. He wants to be entertained and excited. So we built this sort of arena where the center dais has stairs on either side that reach up about 20 feet tall. On top of that, it is seated is a throne. And the throne has a skull in it, and the skull has a crown on it. So basically setting up that this is a center sort of pillar. The crowd around, you could fill it with whatever is appropriate. If you don't have fiends or demons in your campaign, they could be monsters or abominations or whatever sort of custom race. Maybe even fill it with orcs or humans or elves, whoever might be entertained by an arena style fight. But basically, they come into this arena, the door behind them disappears, and they now have to cooperate or entertain the crowd enough to be able to leave and go on to the next stage or return back to wherever they were pulled from. So we have our PCs up in the top there, just sort of generic things, so we don't worry about art trademarks or whatever. We have Telgon, which is a large-sized creature that's standing on sort of a stage pedestal and then begins to speak to the players themselves. The little L that we have there is for legendary actions, part of the mechanics of the encounter itself. So basically, the players are told, hey, this is going to be King of the Hill. If you want to be king, you have to take the hill, and then you will be king. So king in this particular situation is like a status effect. You are the king in this moment. You can use whatever terminology that you want. If you're the crowned, you're the whatever, but I just use the king in this. So, the first part of the encounter, the first thing the players are presented with is a game of King of the Hill. You have to be the last man standing and you have to wear the crown. So it basically turns into a PvP battle. An open PvP battle is the very first encounter that comes along with it. Now, the other things and what my players opted to do is play along, not actually engage in full PvP with one another, but try to put on a show. And it eventually led into the artificer putting the crown on his automaton, and then 4 of them sort of jumping together, and with one explosive AOE, sort of just knocking out the 3 PCs, letting the automaton follower go ahead and be the king for the battle. Now, there was a bit of internal strife because one of the players really got into it, and he understood the assignment. So they very quickly dispatched him and then put into the play of this big lightning strike. So in this encounter, it does depend. If your players commit a lot of their resources to fighting one another, great. Then maybe Telgon would be pleased and you don't have to run his fight encounter at all. But it's more fun to kind of do both. I think it's fun. The thing that makes the PvP battle spicy is our layer actions and this king crowned condition. So here are our layer actions. It may be a little bit hard for you to see, but I'm going to read them out anyway, so it's fine. The layer actions, for anyone who is not familiar, take place on initiative count 20, and goodness, so bright. It's so bright. Initiative count 20, they go off, and you basically pick one from your list, and you do not reuse them once they're used. You have to use another layer action before you can go back to and use one that you've already used. So the first one is Tax the Masses. Each other creature than the king takes necrotic damage equal to 5 times the number of Tax the Masses that have been used. The king regains hit points equal to half the damage dealt. So in essence, the way that would work, say this guy's crowned, we're going to give him the little crown here. He's the king, 5 damage, 5 damage, 5 damage, 5 damage, so 20 damage total has been dealt. You heal 10. Now that gives the incentive to, hey, I want to be king because all these guys got hurt and now I feel better. So that's one way that if your players are not into fighting each other, very much against it in a group of PvP or a group against PvP, you can still tax your players' resources through the layer action. That's sort of the goal of the layer actions, is to harm anyone who is not the king and to try to also put sort of a clock on the encounter so that it's not just running indefinitely. Because Tax the Masses does 5 on the first time, and the next time you use it does 10, and then 15, and then 20, and usually by the time you're at that sort of 20 mark, everybody's super hurt, no matter how many hit points they have. So you could run. This is better at a higher level. I built this around level 9 characters, so just be aware that you can set this number to whatever you need to if they are lower level characters. But this is certainly a higher tier encounter. There's Jealousy of Servitude. Each creature other than the king immediately uses their reaction to make a melee or make a weapon attack or cast a damaging cantrip on the king. You must make a DC 17 Charisma saving throw to resist the effects. So this is engaged. So this guy is the king. All these people are around. Now all of them have to attack the king or try to make a saving throw to resist the effects. So the by default is you're going to attack the king. This is good when later on this affix comes in. But if the players are very much against doing PvP, DC 17 is just sort of what I set it at. It can be really whatever you want the DC to be. But 17 Charisma, I think out of all of my times I use this, I only got one player to attack somebody else once. You can only force the artificer to attack other people because everyone else had huge saves at this point. So DC 17 was kind of in that right place. Next, we have the Crown's Pride. The king regains 20 hit points and gains 3d8 temporary hit points. The king also can end 1 disease or the following conditions: blind, deafened, grappled, restrained, paralyzed, poisoned, or stunned. Basically, this was pulled from the Way of Mercy monk. We took that feature that they get at level 6 so that can end one condition. We slapped that on there. The regeneration, the 20 flat hit points, comes from Telgon, and you'll see that when Telgon goes. Basically, heal 20, get 3d8 temporary hit points, and then can end one negative condition on them. Only good to be the king. So we have one that's good to be the king, sucks to be everybody else. Sucks to be the king, because everybody's trying to attack him. Now we're at very good to be the king, but doesn't harm other people. Long may they reign. Until initiative count 20, the king's crown cannot be taken. The king deals an extra d10 damage on attacks or spells they cast on their turn. The king gains an additional action on each of its turns. That action may only be used to make an attack, one weapon attack, a dash, a disengage, a hide, or use an object. So, very basic. This is haste. You have an extra hasted action. You do an extra d10 on whatever you do, which is kind of like the shroud, spirit shroud. So we're basically just, you're doing some more damage. The crown can't be taken. Only good stuff for the king. The king gets an extra hasted action. Finally, we got King's Feast. Each creature other than the king expends 2d4 levels of spell slots if able. If unable to do so, they suffer 2d8 force damage. So this is another taxing type scenario. So the king is safe. 2d4 levels could be in spell slots. The way that I run this one here, it could be 8, it could be 2. So if it's level 8, say I roll 8, you have to expend 8 levels of spell slots. It could be a 5 and a 3, it could be 2 4s, it could be 4 2s. However levels you want to break that down. That is not something that's very often ever used in regular 5th edition monsters. And then as well, say you have a team of fighters, or there's a barbarian, or a rogue. They don't have spell slots to sacrifice. They just take a little bit of damage. I didn't want this to be. I wanted it to also sort of compete with Tax the Masses, but also at the same time not overshadow it or overtake it. So the 2d8 damage, it really sort of averaged out to that 8-9 range. But often I rolled fairly well and I got like 12 or 11 damage. Similar to if you have a warlock in your party, so warlocks at 9th level only have 5th level spell slots. I rolled a 4 and I rolled a 6, I think, on another one when I use this feature. They only have 5 levels of slots to sacrifice, so they can't do that, so they just take the damage. Which is kind of nice, because then your warlock doesn't feel like they're being bullied because they only have 2 slots. Saying, hey, you have to use your 5th level slot to sacrifice for 3, now you just take the damage. So these are the layer actions, and you kind of use the combination of whatever feels nice. I would recommend starting with Tax the Masses, because then that immediately tells the players, oh crap, this is for real. We have a time limit. It's good to be king. Then, starting off, I like the Jealousy of Servitude, because then everybody starts attacking the king, and it's like, oh shit, now I don't want to be king. And then you use these 3 in tandem as needed, so you can kind of I didn't use Crown's Pride or Long May They Reign at all, because my players were not committing to the fight. So like if you're trying to make the fight interesting while they're doing PvP, so if they're actually going hard at it, then you can do Crown's Pride and Long May They Reign. If it's a matter of they're trying not to be in PvP, you need to tax them some other way, you can use these layer actions. Do whatever you want, whatever feels right for you, whatever you find fun and interesting. Once the fighting ends, here's where the options begin. So obviously we're in PvP, right? People might die, very very possibly could die. The way that I had run it here is when a PC dies, they turn to stone. They failed all their death saves, they turn to stone. This is meant to be a safe encounter. They're not going to die because this is for entertainment. So what happens when the crown wins, say this PC is dead, this PC is dead, these 2 guys are knocked out. So, I'm sleeping and he's sleeping. Great. This PC won. He's the king. She's the king. They're the king. Doesn't matter. Telgon now reveals the Usurper title. Now he tells them, oh yeah, I'm the Usurper. He jumps into the arena. He's then gonna do maybe some battle with the king. He's gonna try to take the crown back. Whatever feels right to you. Maybe he's not satisfied at all. He just starts to um, I think a 1v1 battle is kind of fun because then you can start the fight. They can start to learn some of his abilities. Once he takes the crown back and knocks the player out, I reset the encounter and make it the Telgon encounter. He has taken the crown from the PC. These PCs start at the bottom of the tower. Set them here. Down here. Right. So you set them up however you want. Telgon's on the throne. So they wake up. He's now revealed himself to be the Usurper. His power basically comes from he plays this game, he crowns a king, and then he defeats the king. Now we get into Telgon Usurper. So armor class 20, 230 hit points, 30 movement speed. He's got some stats, immune to necrotic, conditions, charmed, exhausted, frightened. He knows all languages. He's got dark vision. Great. He's got legendary resistances. He's got 3 per day. Regeneration, so he regenerates 20 hit points. So similar, you can see in the Lair actions when we had Crown's Pride, 20 hit points. He gets 20 hit points. And see here's the tip, the Juggernaut. So I forgot to change that one over. Telgon regains 20. If the Juggernaut takes radiant damage, this trait doesn't function until the start of the turn. He only dies if he starts his turn with 0 hit points and does not regenerate. It doesn't require air, food, or sleep. And then Usurp the Crown. This is the one custom ability that we gave him from our base. Telgon has advantage when targeting the king with attacks, and the current king has disadvantage on saving throws Telgon causes. So this is the Usurp action. So basically, in that 1v1 fight with the whoever was crowned, the Telgon has a very unfair advantage. Now, if he say he fights that player and the player does well, they do 10% hit points, 20% hit points, well, then maybe you don't do this encounter at all. It's really whatever feels fun and great for your PCs. Not a lot of people are fans of PvP, but this is kind of a way to be like, here's a safe environment. I want you guys to try it out. Let's be weird. All right, so multi-attack. Telgon makes 2 attacks. It can replace 1 attack with Deadly Shaping if it's ready. Now, Deadly Shaping has a recharge cooldown of 5 or 6, similar to Dragon's Breaths. My team is kind of stacked, so I just went. He has 2 attacks, and he can use Deadly Shaping if it's available. The base of this monster has 2 attacks and can replace 1 with Deadly Shaping. So you would do what feels nice for you, but that's what the monster has as a base. They have a War Pick, which reduces if it hits you, attack your movement speed is reduced by 10 feet until the start of the turn. Fists, if I hit you and you're large or smaller, you make a DC 18 saving throw or go prone. And then Deadly Shaping, they can magically shape the feature of the surrounding in a deadly implement. A creature Telgon sees within 60 feet must make a DC 18 Dex save. If they fail the saving throw, you get 1 of the effects. Now I broke this up a little bit on the sheet in Roll20 so that it doesn't give you the whole thing. You can see Scything Shrapnels here 3 times. But there's Flying Stones. They take 3d8 bludgeoning damage and are incapped until the start of Telgon's next turn. The implement vanishes. Incapacitated is can't take actions, reactions, or reactions on their turn. So basically, it skips their turn. The Scything Shrapnel deals 4d6 slashing damage. The implement vanishes at the start of that creature's turn. They take 3d6 necrotic damage from the wound that's left by the shrapnel, and then the shrapnel wound ends if they regain any hit points or if a creature uses the action to staunch the wound, which requires a successful DC 15 medicine check. So I broke it up like this so that the players don't see the whole text because I roll all my stuff out in the open for the people to see. So this is the one way I try to keep it hidden. Now it has legendary actions, incapable Implaceable Advance. Telgon moves at speed, ignoring difficult terrain, and a object in its path takes 10d10 bludgeoning damage if it isn't carried. So really, the only thing that this would affect in this arena style are these pieces of refuse. If they're trying to hide behind a barrier, that's a show of force where you just go, "I'm the Juggernaut, bitch," and bust through the door. We took channel negative energy. This is another custom not from the character sheet itself. I stole this from the Mummy Lord. Right here. Channel negative energy flood. Just because I was looking at their legendary actions and it seemed a little light. I can basically move, ignoring difficult terrain, and then they can recharge Deadly Shaping and use it for 3 actions. So if I use the movement, then all I can do is use the movement 2 more times. So I wanted to do something else with the channel energy flood. And the way that I encountered this, so knocking out all the PCs, when the encounter starts, they all regain half of their hit points. So you're at half your hit points when you start this fight. So using channel energy, channel negative flood is basically going to make your players, fight Telgon. So there's layer actions, there's legendary actions, and there's legendary resistances. There's this recharging ability. So there's kind of a lot of mechanics to play around with. But this is the base of the monster that I used. It was a Relentless Juggernaut. And this, look at that pretty boy. And this is, I believe, from, Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft is when this guy released. So he normally has a 17 armor class with 161 hit points, a CR 12. But I wanted to bump him up a little bit. My guys are strong. So we started basically with a CR 12 as our base. We added, so you can see he has legendary resistances, the regen, and the unnatural nature, as well as the legendary actions for the movement and the reshaping. All of this stuff is exactly the same. The stats are the same. The movement speed is the same. So basically, I was going through all the fiends, and I saw this guy, and I'm like, man, he's cool. He's got regen. He's got, this deadly shaping is really cool. So I basically grabbed him as the base, slapped a little bit on from the Mummy Lord, and then included him into the layer actions that I was doing for this King of the Hill battle. And that's it. I mean, essentially, they fought a Relentless Juggernaut that had one unique ability that tied into the encounter that they were playing, and then one thing that I stole from the Mummy Lord just to make him a little bit more difficult. Now, the one thing actually I did add is a necrotic immunity. The Juggernaut does not have the necrotic immunity. This is mainly to interact with the channel negative energy flood, because it would be kind of weird that if I can channel negative energy and wash it out and prevent people from healing, that necrotic would hurt me. And it's also to show them that Tax the Masses is only lethal to them. Tax the Masses dealing necrotic damage would not hurt Telgon. So when it gets to like the 20, the 25, the 30 damage per ability, Telgon's feeling fine. He's regaining hit points every round. He's having a blast. Now, the end result will depend on you as the DM. If you think that battling Telgon, surviving Telgon, that is enough, you have your PCs move on, he's entertained, you let him go. If they beat Telgon, great. What ends up happening, or the way that I run it, is Telgon shrinks back down. He ponders about, the results of this test that he says. He obviously, with the rapid reshaping, he has full control over the arena. He makes a scything blade appear from the ground or picks up one of the stones and hurls it. He is the master of this domain. So you can't kill the master of the domain. Maybe he grants them a small reward and sends them on their way. They wake up from their dream and it's over. Or you can just say, yeah, you fought valiantly in this arena, but this is your tomb. You have to leave your friend behind. However you want to play it. Whatever fits for your campaign and your playstyle. But that is the encounter. You start off with the King of the Hill. You have these legendary actions. They get used to the legendary actions through that sort of PvP battle or charade that they put on, and then they fight Telgon, who then amplifies those legendary actions that they've already gotten used to through the first encounter. You could, if your team is 100% against PvP, you start with the king mechanics, and then you can throw waves of monsters at them to start off the battle. Um, the king has to sort of hold that position up top while the other players try to keep the big bad monsters away from him. That's another option if you're very much against PvP. But sometimes I think it's just nice to see. Fifth edition is not designed for PvP, but it's kind of fun to see how powerful your characters are, or let out some of that aggression that you might have against other players as the player in a safe, controlled environment. But always depends on the group. But that's Telgon, and that's also a small demonstration here. We upped his hit points, we upped his armor class, so we instead of the 4d10 plus 48 or 84, we did 10d10 plus 120. So basically, we still kept the same formula. We just bumped up his hit die a couple of levels. So instead of 14, we gave him 20. And instead of 17, we gave him 20 armor class. Whatever would make a challenging unit for them. But you could do this with any number of creatures, or change something that doesn't fit. Maybe you have no demons or fiends at all, but you want to run this Juggernaut. Make him a humanoid. Um, Maybe he was changed by wizards or artificers, or he was from the far realm that came back. However to describe it, don't get caught up on these little descriptors here. You can always just change something around. It's a minor change that would make the fight more interesting for your party, or use a stat sheet that doesn't quite fit. That's the idea. What do you guys think? Would you run this encounter? How would you run this encounter? Is there anything you would change? Let me know in those comments. Thanks again for watching. You guys have a great day.